A Green Bay family is calling for change in how youth sports handle concussions following the death of their son.
They are now working with medical providers to expand access to concussion testing for young athletes. New at 6 tonight, Elise Noe joins us from the newsroom with more on this family's efforts.
Yeah, Chris, David and Sandy Kruse are advocating for baseline concussion testing after their son Kasey suffered a concussion at age 13 while playing hockey. Now, baseline testing is a preseason proactive assessment that measures things like memory, reaction time, and processing speed before an injury happens. The testing was not offered during the time of Kasey's injury. Now, the Kruses say without that baseline, there was no objective data to measure the severity of Kasey's injury or track recovery. They say he experienced long-term physical and mental health challenges in the years that followed. In November 2024, Kasey died by suicide at age 26. Now, the Kruse family is working with local doctors to expand access to baseline testing, which they say could help families and doctors better evaluate health injuries.
We need to do this for these children, so they aren't going to have secondary concussions and have all these issues throughout their entire life. Because these issues, don't go away. All they do is get worse.
Now, tonight at 10, what parents should monitor when their child is injured, and we'll have more on how the Kruse family is working to expand testing locally. Cammie.